Hello, this is a presentation about the functioning and the effects of dopamine by Joanna Szapulska for Northumbria University. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter or a chemical that naturally occurs in our brains, and it's responsible for a range of functions that are listed on the screen. It helps us learn, it helps us stay motivated to perform tasks, it regulates our sleep and our mood, it plays a role in us paying attention and learning new things, and it also regulates some body functions such as our heart rate, blood pressure, nausea or vomiting, or those feelings of nausea and vomiting. It helps us process pain, and it's linked to movement. This shows something called a reward pathway in our brain. Dopamine sends signals of pleasure, so when somebody is happy and having fun or achieving a goal, a signal is sent from the ventral tegmental area, or the VTA, to the prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain, which is responsible for planning, judgment, and decision making. So the hippocampus, which helps us remember things, and the amygdala, which helps regulate emotions, they together help create a conditioned or somewhat automatic response, encouraging a person to repeat that behavior. So basically, you're having fun, and this pathway fires up, it remembers that you're having fun, and it makes you want to or even need to repeat that behavior. Addictive drugs and alcohol quickly create a really strong reward pathway and flood your brain with 2 to 10 times more dopamine than what you would get from food or sex, which are also highly rewarding activities. This flood of dopamine causes a burst of euphoria, or the high that occurs when drugs are used. Regular drug use means that with time, your brain will produce less dopamine, resulting in a chemical imbalance. When you stop using your drug or alcohol, dopamine levels drop, causing very uncomfortable withdrawal symptoms and powerful cravings. And this picture shows dopamine levels in the nucleus accumbens in an average person, a sober person, and then in the brains of users of different substances that are listed on the screen. And as we can see, less shading and less colors on the right shows that there is less dopamine available in the user's brain. Here we can see that there is less dopamine in the basal ganglia and the prefrontal cortex. Since the prefrontal cortex, which as I mentioned guides decision making and judgment, has less dopamine, it means that it's often the case that we can be very impulsive in that moment, and we can decide to use again since that part of the brain is imbalanced. And we also are trying to avoid those unpleasant withdrawal symptoms. So let's discuss the withdrawal symptoms. This slide is just like the first one I showed you that listed all the functions of dopamine. But when the brain is trying to restore that dopamine balance after quitting the substance, at first levels are really low and resulting in these following issues. You can have memory problems and brain fog. You can feel very tired and lazy and very unmotivated to do anything. Your sleep cycle will be disturbed and you won't be getting the same kind of quality of rest. You might go through some mood swings and your mood might dip especially low with experiencing some stronger feelings of depression, anxiety. You might feel panicky. And your body function might be further affected by having low blood pressure. You might feel nauseous. Your pain perception might increase, and you also might be quite shaky and have some tremors. This imbalance can take some time to heal, and then this image shows brain activity of a healthy person and a cocaine user. As you can see in the third image, as compared to the middle one, the user's brain will slowly start recovering. So in this case, 10 days after stopping cocaine, the person clearly has very little dopamine activity. That's the middle picture. And then the brain on the right shows that that balance is being restored after 100 days of abstinence. It's not quite restored to a sober person's brain levels, but it is well on its way. And then here's another example of a brain recovery in a meth user. And after 14 months of abstinence, this person's brain dopamine levels appear to have largely recovered and are comparable to a normal control brain. I'll put this link in the description below so that you can click on it if you'd like to have somebody else discuss all of this. It's a video by a doctor who describes the dopamine pathway and addictive qualities of drugs and how that's related to this pathway. So it's just to repeat the message and the information from this video, but it's presented in another way. So in summary, dopamine plays a role in addiction. When levels are high, we feel really good, we feel euphoria, and that helps us form a very strong, rewarding, addictive association. And then when levels are very low, that feels unpleasant. We feel withdrawal symptoms, really strong cravings, and we can be very impulsive, especially in moments when we're trying to avoid those unpleasant withdrawal symptoms and cravings. So after quitting a substance, it takes a while for the brain to balance out and restore dopamine levels. But the good news is that you can mindfully try to select fun and useful activities and make new rewarding associations to trigger the same pathway in the brain and get that release of dopamine. So how can we do that? Any behavior that you find pleasurable or fun will trigger the dopamine pathway and strengthen the desire to repeat that activity. So it's important to mindfully select things that activities and engage in doing things that we really like. It has to be something we sincerely perceive as fun. Activities such as sex, shopping, the smell of baked cookies, cleaning out your closet, or passing a level of a video game may all lead to a dopamine release and a rush to a certain degree that you value the activity. So, as much as you find it important or fun, then the release of dopamine will be higher. That's why it's important to like what you're doing. And with time, that rewarding feeling can grow and strengthen, just as it did with your substance use. Initially, it was perhaps a bit less of a habit and it became a stronger habit as your brain learned that that is a rewarding and fun activity. So how can we get this rush? The question is, what activities do you like to do? Think about hobbies, games, sports, any tasks or projects you think you would enjoy doing with your friends or family or alone, or anything that you liked doing maybe when you were younger. Think of activities that made you lose track of time because you were having so much fun. And as long as these activities are realistic, healthy, safe, and financially sensible, then that would work. Uh, During the intervention in the study, what we did is we did a list of 10 things that genuinely, the person genuinely thought they liked and enjoyed doing. The idea was to keep that list and refer to it whenever cravings came on for your substance. And that positive feeling from engaging in these activities would hopefully slowly build a new dopaminergic reward association, trigger dopamine, and that would hopefully help you stay busy, distracted, feeling good and engaged, and hopefully with that you would avoid using again. And then this is the reference section. These are references I used for the information in these slides. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for participating in the study. For any other questions, please feel free to contact me.